Go buy tea for everyone. It happened at a famous food company's anniversary party. The company president's daughter, Emily, told me this while tossing a dollar coin at me. I quietly picked up the coin and handed it back to Emily. I felt an overwhelming sadness. Why did I have to be treated with such malice? The employees at the party, who witnessed the scene, turned pale and began murmuring among themselves. What's everyone fussing about? At that moment, Emily's father, the company president, approached me. And then, he uttered something shocking. My name is John, 42 years old. I usually work at a small seaweed processing factory on a remote island, but I recently returned to the city with my family. My two sons said they preferred the island over the city, and my wife also missed the wide open skies of the island. We came back to the city because we were invited to the anniversary party of a famous food company tomorrow. My mentor, the company's executive, Kevin, had asked us to attend, so we returned for the first time in years. Today, Kevin wanted to see me before the party, so I visited the company's headquarters alone. The company was housed in a skyscraper, one of the most prominent buildings in the city. As I admired the impressive building from below, a car roared into the entrance at high speed and stopped. A woman with long hair, wearing a flashy suit and black sunglasses, stepped out of the bright red sports car. Two employees hurriedly rushed out of the entrance to greet her. You're late. You should have been here to open the door before the car arrived. We're sorry. The two employees hung their heads and listened silently to her complaints. Do you know who I am? You're easily replaceable, you know. Seeing this scene, I felt sorry for the employees and couldn't stay silent, so I ended up speaking to the woman. Excuse me. All three of them turned to look at me in surprise at my sudden approach. The woman glared at me sharply and asked, "What is it?" I was momentarily intimidated by her fierce expression but managed to gather my courage and ask, "Excuse me, but I'd like to see Kevin, the executive." Kevin, you say? Do you have an appointment? Yes, my name is John. We're supposed to meet at 1 p.m. today. As soon as I said that, the woman, growing more irritated, said to me, "Why don't you ask at the reception? And by the way, Kevin, does he even work here?" The employees exchanged glances and nervously informed the woman. Kevin is the right-hand man of President Harrison. Miss Emily, you know him well. Hearing this, the woman's face turned red with indignation, her voice rising in anger. I don't know him. Now hurry up, we're going inside. I only came back because my father insisted. With that, she stormed into the building with the employees in tow. Though she was simply known as Emily, could it be that this woman is the daughter of Mr. Harrison, the president of this company? After they left, just as I was about to head to the reception, one of the employees from earlier returned to me. I apologize for earlier. I've contacted Kevin, so please take the elevator up to the 37th floor. Thank you for going out of your way. The employee bowed to me before quickly running back inside. Kevin, it's been a while. Good to see you again. Thank you for coming today. I was delighted to reunite with Kevin after so many years. The last time we met was at your wedding, right? How is your family doing? Yes, my sons are growing up fast. My eldest just started first grade, and my youngest is now 4. My wife is busy every day, experimenting with recipes using local ingredients with her friends on the island. Well, I can't wait to meet them tomorrow. Kevin was my mentor back when I was working at another company for a short period as part of my training. He was a department manager at the time. and he kindly guided me through my early days on the job. I once made a significant mistake that caused a loss for the company, but Kevin never blamed me. Instead, he accompanied me to the client and the company to apologize. On the way back from the client's office, I apologized to Kevin through tears. The words he said to me then have stayed with me ever since. People who never fail never grow. Those words continue to support me to this day. Kevin, please, drop the formalities. Just treat me the way you used to. Well, if you insist. Please. I haven't changed at all. After some initial hesitation, Kevin finally agreed, saying, "All right." We continued chatting about life on the island and my kids, and though we could have talked for hours, I decided to leave, not wanting to disrupt his work. Well, I should be heading out. Already? That's too bad. We'll have plenty of time to catch up at the party tomorrow. I'd like to introduce you to my family, too. That's true. I'm looking forward to it. I said my goodbyes to Kevin and opened the door, nearly bumping into a woman hurrying down the hallway, her high heels clicking loudly. "Ah!" she exclaimed, stopping suddenly. It was Emily, the president's daughter, who had been yelling in the entrance earlier. "Watch it. That was dangerous. I'm sorry. Are you all right?" As I hurriedly asked, Emily seemed to recognize me. "You. What are you doing here? How did you get into our company without permission?" "Well, you see." Hearing the commotion, Kevin quickly came out of his office and began explaining who I was to Emily. "Miss Emily, this is a friend of mine. We had arranged to meet today at the office. But isn't it strange to have someone unrelated to the company here during work hours? I'm telling my father." Upon hearing the words "unrelated to the company," Kevin's expression changed, and he began speaking slowly, trying to calm her down. "Miss Emily, this gentleman is not unrelated to the company. In fact, Before Kevin could reveal my identity, I stopped him and said, "Kevin, it's all right. I'll be leaving now." But I apologized to the woman, saying I'm sorry, and, not wanting to cause any more trouble during work, I hurried towards the elevator to leave the area as quickly as possible. From behind, I heard her shout, "Don't ever come back to our company again." Without looking back, I silently got into the elevator. What was supposed to be a joyful reunion with Kevin was ruined by Emily, and I left with a heavy heart. The next day, I headed to the anniversary party venue with my family. Since the party was in the evening, we planned to stop by my father's factory first and have lunch together. My kids were thrilled to see their grandparents again after so long. My father runs a small factory in a downtown area. I helped out there from the time I graduated middle school until I was 35. My father encouraged me to go to high school, but at the time, there were only 3 employees, including my father. And the factory's business was unstable, heavily influenced by the economy. Considering this, I decided not to pursue further education and instead chose to help out at the factory. "Grandpa, we're here." As my kids called out while entering the factory, my father emerged from the back upon hearing their voices. "Oh, you made it. Dad, it's been a while. How have you been?" "Your mom's been excited to make lunch ever since she heard you all were coming. I'll go help her then." With that, my wife and kids headed towards the main house. After we all had lunch together, just as we were about to leave for the party venue, the phone at the factory rang. It was a call from one of the factory's clients, explaining that due to an ordering mistake, They were short on deliveries to another company and were hoping we could help them out. However, it was Sunday, and the factory was closed, with no employees present. We should try to help them out. It sounds like they're in trouble. But, Dad, you can't do it alone. Don't worry about it. You should head to the venue. The party starts at 4, right? It would be rude to be late. Knowing that my father couldn't possibly handle the workload on his own, I decided to stay behind and help him. I told my wife and kids to go ahead to the venue, assuring them I'd join them later. Although my father was reluctant at first, he silently started working when he saw me putting on the work overalls hanging on a chair in the factory. We finished the job a little after 4 p.m. My father quickly headed out to make the delivery, saying, "John, thank you. I'll take care of the delivery." As I watched him leave, I couldn't help but feel a deep respect for him, for the way he values everyone. The venue was a well-known, historic hotel in the city. In my haste, I forgot to change out of the oil-stained overalls and ended up running to the party's reception dressed like that. The receptionist initially gave me a puzzled look when I arrived in my dirty work clothes, but after confirming my name, she looked at me again and then profusely apologized, saying, "I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry for being late. Is everyone already inside?" "Yes, the party started about 30 minutes ago." "Please, go ahead." I was guided to the entrance, and as I opened the door to step inside, I immediately noticed Emily, the woman from earlier, standing there in a bright red, sequin mini dress, matching the color of the sports car I had seen. Behind her were the same 2 male employees. As soon as Emily caught sight of me, she loudly exclaimed, "Who's this filthy man that looks like a cockroach?" "Miss Emily, perhaps you should lower your voice. Everyone's staring at us." The other employees in the room turned their attention to us, curious about the commotion Emily was causing. A few employees near me started whispering, "Hey, isn't that? Could it be that Miss Emily doesn't know who that is? That can't be, she's the president's daughter. She must know." The murmuring continued, growing louder. "Wait a minute. Aren't you the rude man I almost bumped into at the company the other day? You've come all the way here, in that filthy outfit? What on earth do you want?" I was invited by Kevin." "Kevin, again? What on earth is he thinking, inviting someone as filthy and disgusting as you? He's completely useless." It wasn't just the fact that she called me filthy that shocked me, it hurt more that she insulted Kevin. "Please don't speak ill of Kevin. It's my fault for coming here dressed like this." Hearing that from me, Emily briefly looked like she was about to retaliate with a frustrated expression, but then quickly turned to me with a sly smile and said, "That's right. How dare you talk back to me, you filthy cockroach? But I'm kind, so I might forgive you. I'll even hire you as my servant. You should be grateful." Emily chuckled as she continued, "Listen carefully, this is an order from me." She opened her bag and pulled something out. "Go buy tea for everyone here," she said, throwing a dollar coin at me in front of the watching employees. At that moment, the employees around us turned pale and started murmuring in shock. Only Emily stood there, arms crossed, laughing. "What's everyone so worked up about? It's a great idea. I'm offering to buy tea for everyone here." I crouched down, picked up the dollar coin, and silently held it out to Emily. "What? Are you saying this isn't enough? Or do you just not want to go buy it?" She snatched the dollar coin from my hand as she spoke. I felt an overwhelming sadness. Why did I have to endure such treatment? Had I done something so terrible to deserve this from Emily? The party, which had been lively just moments before, had now fallen into chaos due to Emily's absurd behavior. Amidst the turmoil, I noticed someone slowly walking toward us. I recognized him instantly. I had known this person well since childhood. He stopped in front of me and said, "It's been a long time, John." Kyle. The room, which had been buzzing with murmurs, fell silent at his appearance. Only Emily continued her noisy outburst, "Who's this stranger now? Who even is he? I heard you were coming today, John, so I thought I'd stop by as well." "It's great to see you." Kyle pulled me into a gentle hug. I was truly happy. I had wanted to see Kyle for so long. When I was in elementary school, one of my father's factory clients went bankrupt due to a bounced check. At that time, Kyle was working for that bankrupt company. He was in his 20s back then, sending money back home to his family, but when the factory suddenly went under, he found himself in a tough spot. Seeing Kyle's predicament, my father offered him a place to work and live at our factory. Even though times were tough for our factory as well, my father couldn't bear to see Kyle struggling and decided to hire him. Kyle worked tirelessly every day. I still remember how my father would often say, "Kyle is quick to learn and has a natural talent." I looked up to Kyle as if he were my real older brother, and he, in turn, treated me like a little brother, often saying I reminded him of his own sibling back home. Years passed, and Kyle's skills became recognized, leading to an offer from a large company to hire him. Kyle initially turned down the offer outright, but my father strongly encouraged him to take the opportunity. "Kyle, you're destined to do meaningful work that helps others. You'll gain more experience out there than you would staying here," my father told him. On the morning Kyle left, I cried, pleading, "Don't go." Seeing me in tears, Kyle hugged me and promised, "I'll come back when I've made it. Wait for me until then." I believed in his promise, and after finishing middle school, I worked hard at my father's factory. I thought that if I worked diligently, I could become as skilled as Kyle and get closer to him. Time passed, and the factory eventually found stability by the time I was about to turn 35. One day, a man came to the factory. My father recognized him immediately and shouted, "Kyle, is that really you? It's been a long time, Mr. Nelson." Hearing his voice, I rushed out from the back, and when he saw me, he smiled warmly. "It's been a while, John. Kyle, I've missed you." His smile was just as I remembered, nostalgic and comforting. My father invited him to have dinner with us, and Kyle was delighted. He reminisced about my mother's cooking, and for the first time in years, we all sat down at the same table. After dinner, Kyle asked me, "John, are you married yet?" "No, I'm seeing someone, but I'm still not there yet." "Well, how about getting there?" "Huh? What do you mean?" Kyle sat down in front of us, folded his legs under him, and said, "I want you to take over my company, John." "What?" "I want you to become the chairman of all 50 of my group companies." "What? Chairman? Of 50 companies?" As I listened, I learned that Kyle was now the chairman of a group of 50 companies, and he wanted me to take over all of them. No way. I can't handle such a huge responsibility. "I want you to do it because I trust you." No matter how many times I said it was impossible, Kyle kept insisting. Even my parents, who were initially shocked, eventually agreed with Kyle's proposal and ended up joining him in convincing me. Overwhelmed by their determination, I found myself saying, "All right, I'll give it a try." After that, I began studying business management at an accelerated pace. I also visited each of the group companies across the country, working undercover from the ground up to truly understand the business. I thought that by not revealing my identity as the chairman, I might better understand the true essence of the companies. During this time, I married my current wife and relocated my family to a remote island. On that island was a small seaweed processing factory, one of the group companies where I had been training. I had fallen in love with the island during that time. The factory emphasized the importance of human connections, which reminded me of my father's factory. Just recently, I had finally announced to the media that I was the current chairman. Emily, meanwhile, watched our reunion with a bored yawn. Gradually, the employees began to realize who we were, and eventually, they started whispering among themselves. "Isn't that the former chairman and the current chairman?" It seemed that Emily overheard this but didn't quite understand what it meant, so she asked her attendants, "What do they mean by the current and former chairman?" I didn't know until recently, but apparently, those two are the current and former chairman of our company. What? Why didn't anyone tell me? And why didn't you say anything sooner? Realizing I was the current chairman, Emily began to panic and started blaming the employees for not informing her sooner. "We've been traveling abroad with you for years, Miss Emily, and we only just returned. We didn't know who the current chairman was either." One of the employees shouted this, nearly in tears, before running out of the room. Seeing this, the other employee quietly followed suit. I sympathized with them. They had clearly reached their breaking point. After the employees left, Emily was left standing alone, surrounded by a crowd of employees who watched her from a distance. They ran away so quickly. "This is boring, I might as well leave too." Just then, the door opened, and Emily's father, Mr. Harrison, walked in. "Oh, Dad? Weren't you resting in your room?" After the party started and Mr. Harrison finished his greeting, it seems he took a break in a room for a while. The employees around me were saying that he's been busy with consecutive workdays and doesn't seem to be feeling well. It was the first time I saw Mr. Harrison, and I noticed that he did indeed look unwell. He had received a report from his secretary about the commotion and hurried back to the venue. Ignoring Emily's surprised expression, Mr. Harrison walked past her, approached me, and suddenly knelt down, bowing his head to the floor in a deep apology. "Mr. Nelson, I sincerely apologize for my daughter's behavior." Seeing her father bowing to me in front of all the employees, Emily seemed to be embarrassed and shouted, "Dad! What are you doing in front of everyone? Get up already." Still on his knees, Mr. Harrison raised his head and glared at Emily, shouting back, "You apologize too. Do you even know who this man is?" Despite her father's words, Emily showed no signs of concern. "Who? I don't know him well, but isn't he just the chairman of our company? That doesn't have anything to do with me, right?" Hearing this, Mr. Harrison began trembling with rage. "Emily, you are such a fool. It pains me to see how ignorant my own daughter has become." The employees in the room were watching the drama between the president and his daughter intently, not wanting to miss a single word. Mr. Harrison then turned back to me, resuming his bowing position, and said, "Mr. Nelson, I deeply apologize. The fact that my daughter has become like this is entirely my fault as her parent. I take full responsibility, and I intend to resign from my position as president immediately." His declaration of resignation sent a wave of shock throughout the room. "Mr. Harrison, please raise your head. There's no need to bow like this." I couldn't help but think that, regardless of the parent-child relationship, It wasn't right for a parent to bow an apology for something an adult daughter had done. So, I tried to stop him from continuing his apology. However, Mr. Harrison wouldn't budge. No, I have turned a blind eye to my daughter's mistakes for far too long. They say the more troublesome the child, the more you love them. But by giving her money and letting her do as she pleased, I've allowed her to become someone who has no sense of common decency and who looks down on others. This is all my responsibility. The resolve in his voice was strong, as if he had come to terms with his decision. From now on, I will resign as president, and furthermore. He then looked at Emily and made a shocking declaration. I will disown my daughter. What? Disown? His declaration was a shock not only to Emily but to me and everyone else present. You're over 30 now, a grown woman, and yet you know nothing about the world. You've lived selfishly, without learning how to interact with others. From now on, you will be on your own, and you will learn from scratch what the world is really like. No way. I absolutely refuse. No matter what you say, I'm not leaving home. Try and make me if you can. Emily remained defiant, even towards her own father, showing no intention of backing down. At that moment, bang! The entrance door burst open. Wait a minute. Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. It was Emily's attendants, who had left earlier, now returning. We have something to confess about Miss Emily's wrongdoings. It's about the crimes Miss Emily tried to commit. What do you think you're doing, coming back now? The room, which had been silent moments before, buzzed with renewed excitement at the attendants' revelations. Miss Emily tried to take confidential company information without permission. She was planning to sell it to a rival company. What? Mr. Harrison turned pale as he heard this shocking confession from Emily's attendants, visibly shaken. Of course, it's impossible due to security measures, but when she realized she couldn't do that, she told us to find a way to withdraw money from the company instead. The attendants' confessions caused the employees' frustrations with Emily to boil over. What does she think this company is? It's the company we've worked so hard to support. And just because she's the boss's daughter, she's been doing whatever she wants at the company. Never show your face here again. As the employees' angry shouts filled the room, Mr. Harrison remained crouched on the floor, his head hung low in despair. Seeing Mr. Harrison in this state, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sympathy for him. To be betrayed like this by the daughter he had cared for so much. Meanwhile, Emily showed no signs of remorse. Shaking her leg impatiently and even occasionally clicking her tongue in irritation as she listened to the employees' accusations. Eventually, Mr. Harrison, still looking down, weakly stood up and said, "Can someone please call security?" When the security guards, summoned by the employees, arrived at the venue, Mr. Harrison pointed directly at Emily and made a firm request. "Please escort this woman out of here." "What? There's an intruder here. Remove her from the premises immediately." "What's wrong with you, Dad? Have you lost your mind?" "The one who's lost their mind is you. We're no longer father and daughter, you're a stranger to me. Now, get out." The security guards grabbed Emily by the arms and dragged her out of the venue. Even as she was being removed, Emily continued to shout loudly, "This can't be happening. Dad. Hey, let go of me. Do you know who I am?" I later heard that after Emily was escorted out of the hotel by the security guards, she still tried to force her way back in. And the police had to be called. Even when the police arrived, she continued to scream, "I'm the president's daughter." Don't touch me. Let me back in now. After Emily was removed from the venue, Mr. Harrison bowed his head to everyone and reiterated his intention to resign before attempting to leave the room. I stopped him and persuaded him to reconsider resigning and instead to make a renewed effort for the company's sake. I told him that if he truly felt remorse for what had happened, he should focus on what he could do to help the employees from now on. Mr. Harrison, however, resisted, saying, "I'm not qualified for that." At that moment, Kevin spoke up. "I've been saved by you many times. I've worked by your side for years, and I've always seen you think of the company and the employees. I believe everyone here shares that sentiment." The employees all nodded in agreement. With tears in his eyes at Kevin's words, Mr. Harrison still refused to retract his resignation, saying, "No, but even so, Mr. Harrison, I'm still young and inexperienced, but I'd like to share something with you. A mentor once told me something that has supported me ever since." I then spoke the words that had been so important to me. People who don't know failure can't grow. I believe that no matter how old you are, you can always start over and learn from your mistakes. That's why I want you to continue working hard for the employees' sake. Kyle, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward and said to Mr. Harrison, "Mr. Harrison, you worked hard and grew this company from the ground up. You may have made mistakes in raising your daughter, but as John just said, people who don't know failure can't grow. Please take that to heart and keep pushing forward." "I'm sorry, everyone, I'm so sorry." With that, President Harrison broke down in tears, unable to speak further. I put my arm around his shoulder, offering words of comfort. The employees, moved by the scene, began to applaud and continued for a long time. After that, Emily was indeed disowned by her parents and kicked out of the house. She was also sued by her former attendants, who claimed they had suffered emotional and physical abuse. And she was ordered to pay a substantial amount in damages. Unable to find employment and needing money to pay the damages, she eventually ended up working on a fishing boat owned by one of Kyle's acquaintances, helping with cleaning and assisting the fishermen. At first, Emily tried to escape frequently, so now the fishermen keep a close eye on her. A mutual acquaintance who had seen Emily recently reported that she looked nothing like her former flashy self, no makeup, unkempt hair, tanned and gaunt like an old woman. Even so, if she works hard there someday, she might become a much better person than she was back then. I'm holding on to that faint hope. As it turned out, my family wasn't in the party hall during the whole ordeal. My youngest son had fallen asleep, so the three of them had been resting in a waiting room. I was relieved to hear that. I didn't want my children to witness such a scene. When we left the hotel, it was already getting dark outside. As we were about to head home, Kyle was waiting for us. "John, today must have been tough for you." "Thanks, Kyle. It was tough for you too. Are you heading back to the island?" "Yeah, life there suits us better, both me and my family." I looked at my family, and they all nodded back at me with the same warm smiles. I'll keep studying business while working on the island and continue visiting the companies when necessary. It might inconvenience the company and make my family miss me when I'm away, but, Dad, because you're working hard, we'll work hard too. Me too. Even though I miss you sometimes, I love seeing you work so hard. Ooh, how romantic. I was so moved by my family's support that I had to look up to stop myself from tearing up. I'm glad I entrusted everything to you. I've never been much of a businessman, just a guy who loves making things. When I was struggling with what to do with the companies, I suddenly thought of you, John. Really? I always wondered why you chose me. You grew up watching your father, didn't you? You've become kind, thoughtful, and you've grown into someone just like him. Kyle's words resonated deeply within me. I was touched to know he thought of me that way. You're a strong person because you never abandon those who are weak. That's why I knew I could trust you with everything. Yeah. Dad's the best and the strongest. Yes, the absolute best. Come on, now I'm embarrassed. I felt a renewed sense of gratitude for everyone around me. The reason I've been able to stay true to myself all these years is thanks to my parents, my family, Kyle, and Kevin. Dad, let's go back to the island soon. Yes, let's head back soon. To the place where I truly belong. You're fired. Whether you're here or not doesn't make a difference. I had joined a company that supplies ingredients for school lunches through a mid-career recruitment. One day, during my first time helping with deliveries, I ended up being late. Rudy, the office manager who hadn't helped me at all, told me I was fired. I'll inform Mr. Truman, so you don't need to come in tomorrow. As he abruptly dismissed me, there was something in his expression that seemed suspicious. But little did Rudy know that his scheme would lead to such an outcome. My name is Hugo. I'm more of an indoor type, good at focusing on detailed tasks. At work, I often use computers to increase efficiency. I've had that tendency since I was a kid. While my school friends were playing soccer or baseball, I was deeply engrossed in video games or board games. Next, here. I placed my piece, showing the white side up. I checked the board vertically, horizontally, and diagonally, flipping the black pieces wherever there was white. Oh my, you're strong, Huey. The lady living next door, perhaps worried that I was always playing alone, often played with me. We played card games and board games like the game of life almost every day. On this day, she was playing Othello with me. Most of the pieces on the board were white, and the result was a landslide victory for me. I wasn't sure if she was letting me win, but as a child, I simply accepted it and rejoiced. I did it! He. She smiled at the sight of me, a happy boy. I've never lost a game at school. Oh my, really? I was undefeated in board games, card games, and other competitive games, whether digital or analog, at school. My win rate was particularly high in puzzle games. The other day, everyone praised me. Well, that's amazing. On the other hand, when it came to sports in gym class, I had no chance of winning. Oh, it's almost 5 p.m. already. I'd better clean up the Othello board and head home. Thanks again for today. You're welcome. Come by and play anytime. Okay. Both of my parents worked, so they wouldn't be home until this time. I was supposed to go to an after-school program since leaving a grade schooler alone at home was concerning. However, since it would be inconvenient to pick me up from there, the lady next door kindly offered to look after me. My mom offered to pay for snacks, but the lady refused. Thanks to her generosity, I was looked after without any expectation of repayment. My nature didn't change even in high school. I was good at thinking things through logically and solving problems step by step. Because of that, I never struggled with math. Later, I continued to excel in math even after entering college. I see, so that's how it works. Oh no, wait, that's wrong. I stared intensely at the math workbook. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect. Math was my best subject. I also liked physics, but when they ignored air resistance or assumed no friction, I found such unrealistic assumptions to be bothersome. There are quite a few exceptions, and I have a bit of a hard time with it. On the other hand, math is universal. There are exceptions, but not as many as in physics. Once you've proven something in math, it's an undeniable fact that always holds true. By combining multiple rules, problems unravel themselves. I get excited during the process and feel an incredible sense of accomplishment when I solve them. When I think about it, it's a lot like a puzzle. No wonder it suits my tastes. Oh, I see, it's this way. When the path to the solution opens up, I get this rush similar to finding the best move in chess or Avalon. But then again, there are subjects I'm absolutely terrible at. Tomorrow's test is math and world history. To me, history classes at school are just about memorizing timelines. I can't shake the image that it's just in this year, this person did this, the end. It's so dull, and I can't seem to change that perception now. The history explanation videos on YouTube, where they structure it like a story and explain the motives behind actions, are interesting. And if it's about some occult historical theory or something I learned through a board game's lore, I remember it well. So I have a bit of knowledge, but school classes still make me drowsy. Literature is a complete no-go. I don't understand a thing. The test material for literature gets deleted from my memory right after the test is over. My friends tease me, calling me a math nerd or something like that. In response, I'd often joke back, saying, I'm not one to dwell on the past, turning it into a laugh. Naturally, I chose a college path where I could immerse myself in math. However, my struggle with liberal arts held me back from getting into any prestigious schools. I ended up at a somewhat obscure local university, majoring in math, physics, and engineering, and managed to stay on track to graduate in 4 years without repeating a grade. This one's no good, this one's no good. Oh, this one's no good either. My 4 years at university went relatively smoothly, but I hit a wall right at the end during the job hunt. I got an email. I heard my phone's notification sound and opened it. Got dumped again. All I kept getting were rejection notices. Fall had passed, and as winter approached, I was getting more and more anxious with no job offer in sight. Most of my friends had already secured offers. It was obvious at that point that it wasn't about my academic background. Having spent my life in small, tight-knit communities, I wasn't good at talking to people. Hugo, how's the job hunt going? Well, to be honest, not so great. Not just my friends, but even Mr. Tanner from my research lab started worrying about me. I'd written so many application forms that I lost count. I see. But don't get too discouraged. Yeah, I'll keep trying. But after the latest rejection, I was out of options. I had to find new places to apply from the first round again. In this dire situation, spring was just around the corner. What? I got the job. Just as I was starting to lose hope, I received an email not with a rejection, but with a job offer. I had only sent in my application and gone through one interview, but they had already made a decision. Although I felt a bit suspicious, I didn't have the luxury to be picky. I contacted the company and arranged to start working there in June of the following year. After all the struggles to get into the company, I ended up quitting in just about 2 years. On the surface, it seemed fine, but internally, it was a ridiculously toxic environment. They were always short-staffed, with unpaid overtime and taking the last train home being the norm. The bosses were all terrible, and within half a year, both my mind and body were completely worn out. After 2 years of living like that, my health deteriorated to the point where I had to be hospitalized. Oh, so that's why there aren't any senior employees close to my age here, I thought as I quickly submitted my resignation. If a company is willing to hire someone late in the season, it's probably for reasons like this. After being discharged from the hospital, I returned to my parents' house and spent some time doing nothing. Realizing I couldn't continue like that, I started looking into finding a new job. Around that time, an acquaintance introduced me to a job. It was in a completely different field, and I wasn't sure if I could use my experience, but I decided to give it a try. Only after I accepted the job did I realize that maybe jumping into things so quickly wasn't the best idea. And so, this is Hugo, who will be working with us starting today. On my first day at the new job, I was introduced by Mr. Truman during the morning assembly. He's almost 70 years old, and he's the epitome of kindness. He walks with a straight posture, leaving a strong impression as someone who is still very much active. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Hugo. I'm completely new to this industry, so I would really appreciate it if you could kindly guide me along. This company is a wholesale distributor dealing with food products, mainly supplying ingredients for school lunches in the surrounding area. When I introduced myself, the employees welcomed me with applause. Compared to the toxic workplace at my last job, the people here seemed almost too pure, to the point of being blinding. He'll be doing clerical work. Everyone in the office, please assist him, especially you, Yolanda. Nice to meet you all. Yolanda is Mr. Truman's wife. She apparently works alongside him as a clerk. When I greeted everyone again, the other clerks responded warmly. The clerical staff seemed to be older on average compared to the people handling deliveries. They all appeared to be kind, older men and women. Mr. Truman and Yolanda were both all smiles as well. A little time passed after I joined, and I started to get the hang of the job, if only slightly. Mr. Truman was exactly the kind person he appeared to be, almost strangely so. He would even go around serving drinks to employees during work hours. Yolanda, on the other hand, was always busy. I often saw her sweeping the entrance or tending to the flower beds every day. It's nice to call it a family-like atmosphere, but honestly, I thought the pace here was a bit too relaxed. Oh no, I messed up. Given the age range, it might be expected, but the systems at this company are a bit outdated. Invoices, delivery slips, and internal forms are all handwritten. When I realized I had made a mistake on a delivery slip at the last minute, I couldn't help but let out a groan. Oh dear, did you make a mistake? Yes, I'll have to rewrite it. Hearing my sigh, Yolanda handed me a new slip, saying, I do that all the time too. Since the delivery address was quite long, rewriting it was going to be a bit of a hassle. If only we could use a computer and printer to print these things, this wouldn't be an issue. I silently rewrote the slip, all the while lamenting the situation in my head. This time, I finished it without any mistakes. It was just one slip for an urgent matter, so it wasn't too bad, but the person responsible for this task has to write several of these every day. They should probably switch to a more efficient method, especially for invoices. Some people do use computers, but it's for tasks that are the complete opposite of efficiency. For example, there's someone who goes through the mysterious ritual of re-entering the destination items and tracking numbers into a spreadsheet after sending a package. If we had a scanner, we could just save everything as a PDF, but it seems there's no such high-tech equipment here. Oh, wait, here's a better way to do that. She was entering dates one by one into a spreadsheet, taking about a second for each key press. She wasn't very familiar with using a computer yet. I showed her how to use the autofill feature. A task that would have taken her several minutes was completed in just a few seconds. She blinked in astonishment. Wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? Well, first, you do this here. Even though it wasn't really a complex procedure, she was carefully jotting down every word I said. And then, it automatically fills in the rest like this. I didn't know there was such a trick. Hugo, you really know your way around a computer. Seeing her reaction, I couldn't help but be a little impressed, despite myself. I'm an old man, I'm an old woman. Many people stop learning for such reasons. But not her. You could see the determination in her eyes to eventually master this modern tool called a computer. As a newbie, it feels strange to say this, but this company is small. Yet, it seems to me that my senior colleagues are just stagnant. The story of me teaching someone about computers spread throughout the company in no time. I just teach them the basics, like simple functions and shortcut keys, but the employees are like, amazing, and they praise me in an exaggerated way. I quickly gained a reputation as the go-to computer expert. As I started to see some positive results in improving work efficiency and began to feel more confident, there was someone who didn't take it well. Hey, Hugo, stop doing things on your own. One day, right as I arrived at work in the morning, I was suddenly reprimanded. As I looked around, confused, a man emerged from the back of the office. It was Rudy, the office manager here, who was also my direct supervisor. Good morning. I don't need your greetings. I didn't think I had done anything to deserve being scolded, but he was heading toward me with an intense expression. I hear you've been meddling with how we do things around here, even though you're just a newbie. Are you talking about the efficiency improvements? His complaints were vague and without specifics. Unfortunately, I'm all too familiar with such unreasonable behavior. I hate to admit it, but my experience at the toxic workplace is somewhat coming in handy. But the way things are now, it's too much work for everyone. Shut up. Just stop doing things on your own. As I was getting scolded, other clerks started arriving one by one. There was a bit of a commotion as they wondered what was going on, and Mr. Truman and Yolanda, who had heard Rudy's voice, also came over. What's the matter, Rudy? A senior employee asked him, but he wasn't calming down. This guy's been messing around without permission. Rudy kept shouting the same thing over and over. It's true that changing how work is done without consulting anyone isn't good. I probably should have at least discussed it with someone first, but does he really need to be this angry? Calm down, Rudy, Mr. Truman said. Mr. Truman, how can you stay calm about this? Despite Mr. Truman's gentle attempt to soothe him, Rudy's tantrum didn't subside. A few people around were visibly shrinking back. Rudy. Yes. Seeing this, Mr. Truman called out his name sharply. Finally, Rudy fell silent. Listen carefully, Rudy. This company's operational system is outdated by industry standards. As the office manager, you should be well aware of that, right? Yes. Mr. Truman expressed his support for the work efficiency improvements I had been leading. He explained that he wanted everyone to work together to grow the company, even just a little. After hearing this, Rudy quietly apologized, saying, "I'm sorry." The morning uproar finally settled down. So, Hugo, I'm entrusting you with the task of improving our work efficiency. Feel free to proceed as you see fit. And everyone, if you need any help from me, don't hesitate to ask. Thank you very much. Mr. Truman said bye and went out for a meeting. However, throughout the day, I could feel Rudy's unpleasant gaze on me. It wasn't quite hatred. It was more like he was looking at me with some kind of jealousy. After that, I continued to use my spare time to build systems to improve work efficiency. Since I had received direct permission from Mr. Truman, I was able to expand my efforts even more than before. I started with the core of the company, the order processing system. I made it so that the food warehouse's inventory, what had come in and what was left, was visible, allowing the order processors to keep track in real time. Next, I tackled the smaller aspects of the office. Re-entering handwritten delivery slips into the computer for storage was too much work. I introduced scanners and changed the process to save documents as electronic files. For now, they're stored on memory drives. But I've also pitched to Mr. Truman the idea of setting up an internal server for storage in the future. Since that would involve a significant cost, I can't do it on my own. It's become so convenient. Yes, look, storing documents is now as simple as this. Everyone seemed particularly fond of the scanner, and they always looked happy when converting documents to PDF. By this time, most people had gotten used to working on computers, and some even expressed their gratitude, saying, "Thank you." It's made things so much easier, in a rather exaggerated manner. Yolanda was among them, and I began to be seen as a valued member of the team by Mr. and Mrs. Truman as well. With more efficiency in the office, there was even talk of expanding our market. Thinking that my work was helping the company grow made my job incredibly enjoyable. But I'm being glared at again. However, it seemed Rudy wasn't pleased with all of this. One day, while I was working in the office as usual, Rudy came over to my desk. "Hugo, we've got a bit of a crisis in the field. There aren't enough delivery people. I need you to go help out." Understood. He said he had already gotten Mr. Truman's approval, so I borrowed the truck keys and quickly got in. Of course, it wasn't a new vehicle, and it was a manual transmission. They said the car was just inspected the other day, but is this okay? I'm a little scared. Back in school, my driver's education course had the rare option of teaching both manual and automatic, and out of curiosity, I took both. But I hadn't touched a clutch pedal since then. I drove the unfamiliar vehicle for about half an hour, heading toward the designated school. This should be the area. I had set up the navigation on my phone, but the roads were so convoluted that I couldn't find the exact location. The GPS announced, "You have arrived at your destination," but I still couldn't pinpoint the entrance. The destination was likely just around the corner, and I could even see the building. This is frustrating. Maybe I should ask for directions. I parked the truck and decided to call the office on my phone. I dialed the number registered under the office. "This is Rudy," came the voice after 2 rings. Since my phone was registered with the office, he immediately knew it was me calling. "It's Hugo. I'm near the destination, but I can't seem to find the entrance." "What? Don't bother me with something like that." I was scolded so harshly that I instinctively pulled the phone away from my ear for a moment. "I'm really sorry, but I'm completely lost. We're busy here too. Just figure it out on your own." "But, oh." I tried to argue, but he abruptly hung up on me. The office staff probably wouldn't know the detailed directions, and as for the other drivers, this is terrible, I don't know their phone numbers. I'd always called them from the office phone using speed dial, so I never memorized them. Guess I'll just have to keep searching. I stared at the map app for nearly 20 minutes before finally finding what seemed to be the right road. It was a narrow path, barely wide enough for the truck. No wonder I couldn't find it on my first try. I deeply apologize for the delay. I finally managed to reach the school and deliver the food supplies. However, I was significantly behind schedule. We can't afford to have such delays. We need to cook on time. I'm truly sorry. I was thoroughly scolded by the kitchen staff. I repeated my apologies over and over. Whether or not they forgave me, I returned to the office feeling utterly downcast. As soon as I walked in, I saw Rudy standing there with a furious expression. "We got a complaint from the school because of you. What are you going to do about it?" Apparently, the kitchen staff had called the company multiple times due to the delay. The office staff had been quite worried due to the frequent calls. "I'm sorry, but if you had given me directions when I called." "Don't talk back to me. They said they're not going to order from us anymore. The next order will be their last. You've caused us to lose an important client. Can you take responsibility for that?" It was clear he wasn't interested in hearing my side of the story. "Don't talk back" is an unbeatable phrase. Once it's said, you're completely stuck. "Come on, Rudy, there's no need to yell like that." A senior office clerk stepped in to try and help me out. But it seemed that this time, Rudy's anger wouldn't be so easily soothed. "Shut up. This doesn't concern you, so stay out of it." The senior clerk recoiled at his harsh tone. "It's not that I'm entirely blameless for the late delivery. I should have double-checked the directions and landmarks before setting out." However, I also feel that Rudy's response was far from appropriate. Did the kids at the school get their lunch on time?" I felt genuinely sorry if this situation caused any delay in their meals or if they missed out on eating altogether. "That doesn't matter. What are you babbling about?" Though I was concerned about the children, ultimately our customers, Rudy only grew angrier, slamming his fist on the desk as he yelled. "Did I really ask something so wrong? You better watch yourself." "I'm sorry." He glared at me as I shrank back, then returned to his desk. According to the whiteboard, Mr. Truman was out of the office. I decided I would apologize to him when he returned. With that plan in mind, I resumed my work, but Rudy kept muttering under his breath. The atmosphere in the office was tense and miserable for the rest of the day. As the clock ticked past the end of the workday, one by one, my colleagues left after saying their goodbyes. Apparently, Mr. Truman was going to head straight home. I thought about leaving and apologizing first thing in the morning. Just as I was about to pack up and leave, Rudy approached me again. "Hey, Hugo." "Yes?" This time, his demeanor was completely different from earlier. He spoke in a gentle tone, with a soft expression on his face. "You're fired. It doesn't matter if you're here or not." As soon as Rudy finished speaking, his face twisted into a malicious grin, a smug look of triumph. I was so taken aback that my mind went blank. After a few seconds, I realized what was happening and thought to myself, "You don't have the authority to fire me, do you?" But it would only escalate things or trigger another tantrum. I decided not to say it. "Understood." I averted my gaze by looking down at the floor. As I turned to leave, Rudy, looking pleased with himself, said, "I'll inform Mr. Truman, so you don't need to come in tomorrow." He then made a shooing gesture with his hand. "Thank you for everything," I said in a low voice, bidding farewell to the company. That night, I received a call from Mr. Truman, who must have learned about the situation. "Don't worry about it. You just go ahead and do what you need to do." His voice was gentle, genuinely kind. So much so that it nearly brought me to tears, especially in contrast to Rudy. "Thank you so much, Mr. Truman." Even though he couldn't see me over the phone, I was on the verge of tears as I thanked him. "No need to thank me, Hugo. I'm the one who should be thanking you." "Well, good night." "Yes, good night." I placed a hand on my chest as I ended the call. Even though I still felt down, if I was fired, so be it. I'd proceed with my plans with Mr. Truman. 6 months after I was fired from the company, I visited a brand new building, just as I had been doing regularly. This is my new workplace. Wait, is that? Standing in front of the entrance was a familiar figure. He looked quite disheveled, as if he had rushed over here in a panic. It was a man in a wrinkled suit. Rudy? What are you doing here? Hugo. It's all because of you. The moment he saw me, Rudy lunged at me. Whoa, watch out. I dodged to the side, causing him to stumble and fall. As he got up, wincing and muttering ouch, ouch, he glared at me with a look of pure anger. Because of you, the company went out of business. How dare you? As Rudy said, after I left, Mr. Truman's company indeed closed down. Most of the employees from there transferred to this company, which I had founded. So, it wasn't like I needed him to tell me in such an angry manner. I was already well aware. No, it wasn't my fault. Mr. Truman was considering retirement due to his age. At that time, I patented the company's system, and he allowed me to start a new company with a fresh start. I calmly explained this to Rudy, whose face twisted with confusion. Patent? Isn't that company property? Mr. Truman was kind enough to let me file the patent personally, as I was the one who developed it. I continued to state the facts to the fuming Rudy. The contrast seemed to irritate him even more, and he retorted, nearly in tears. Right after you left, the company's system stopped working. What did you do? I couldn't help but be astonished. Was this man really the office manager? Of course it did. There was no authorization to use it. But we've always used it. Why would we need authorization now? No matter what I said, Rudy had a rebuttal for everything. That's not how it works. Every other company has applied for usage, and there's no special treatment. When I said it a little harder, he just groaned, ah. Well, maybe none of this would have happened if someone hadn't fired me. I added with a sharp edge, unable to keep my emotions in check. The company quickly fell apart after it reverted to the old, outdated systems. They had taken on too much work, more than could be managed manually. Meanwhile, the company I started was growing rapidly. The patent for the operational system allowed me to earn licensing fees. And with Mr. Truman's support, the company flourished. When I first discussed the patent application with Mr. Truman, he turned the conversation around to me. What? You want to start a new company using this patent as a cornerstone? Yes. I've been thinking of closing up the business. He explained that he wanted me to take over the clients and employees. But then he shared another shocking reason. Closing up isn't just because of my age. There's another reason. A reason? Mr. Truman looked down with a somber expression before returning to his usual cheerful demeanor as he explained. Yolanda has terminal colon cancer. What? I was speechless. I never would have guessed. She always seemed so healthy, yet she was battling such a terrible illness. The doctor said she doesn't have much time left. She doesn't even know yet. Yolanda. Given the circumstances, Mr. Truman wanted to retire and spend their remaining time together peacefully. I'm sorry to burden you with all this, but I trust you can handle it. Also, please keep this matter between us. He suggested that we tell the employees that the closure was due to poor performance, so Yolanda wouldn't become suspicious. I truly apologize for involving everyone in this, he added, leaving me at a loss for words. I felt a deep sense of responsibility to do whatever I could for Mr. Truman and Yolanda. That sense of duty weighed on me heavily. It was shortly after that when the incident with the delayed delivery occurred. Conveniently fired after that, I took the opportunity to fully launch the new company. Thanks to Mr. Truman's groundwork with our clients and employees, the company grew rapidly within just 6 months. Since I had promised to keep the matter a secret, I didn't mention anything about Yolanda's illness to Rudy. However, "It's your fault that Mr. Truman's wife got sick," he muttered. Somehow, Rudy knew about Yolanda's illness, and he said it as if blaming me. "Did Mr. Truman tell you that?" I asked. He shook his head. "I was jealous of you. You came in as a newcomer, made a big impact, and got all that attention from Mr. Truman and his wife." Through tears, he admitted that he had tried to bring me down out of jealousy. When he heard that the person he had ousted went on to start a new company and made $10 million in profits, he was stunned. On top of that, as employees began to transfer one by one to my new company, he became convinced that I was the villain. Rudy's voice trembled as he recounted this. I had somewhat sensed his feelings, but hearing it directly was still a shock. "How is Mrs. Truman doing? She can't even get out of bed anymore." "What?" His response was far worse than I had imagined, and I couldn't help but raise my voice in shock. Internally, I cursed the fact that Mr. Truman hadn't told me sooner. Was it because he didn't want me to worry? "Rudy, do you know which hospital Yolanda is in?" "Huh? Do you know where she is?" When he didn't respond, I pressed him, and he finally snapped out of it. "Yes, I know. I'll drive. This time, make sure to give me proper directions." I practically forced the now defeated Rudy into the passenger seat of the company car, and he guided me to the hospital. When we arrived, I rushed to Yolanda's room. There she was, lying in bed, with Mr. Truman sitting on a foldable chair beside her. "Oh, you came?" She greeted me with a raspy voice. The woman who used to cheerfully sweep the entrance was now a shadow of her former self. Her limbs had grown frail, and it seemed like the wrinkles on her face had deepened significantly. She looked like a different person. "Thank you for coming to see me, Huey. Aunt Yolanda." We addressed each other with the nicknames we hadn't used in years. Yolanda had known me since childhood. She was the neighbor who looked after me instead of daycare and played games with me. "That is this Yolanda." Though we weren't related by blood, our families had always been close. Yolanda was the one who took me in when I was holed up after quitting the toxic workplace. "Sorry I couldn't visit more often." "It's okay. You've been busy with the new company, right?" I gently held her hand. Her fingers, now so thin, felt like they were just skin and bones. "Make sure to visit your parents sometimes, okay? The last time we talked, your mom was complaining a bit," she said with a familiar, gentle smile that hadn't changed over the years. As Rudy watched Yolanda and me chatting warmly, he seemed surprised. Mr. Truman patted Rudy's back gently and said, "Thank you for coming, Rudy. Yolanda is a lucky woman to have you here. He say thank you for that." His words of gratitude moved all three of us to tears. The only one who wasn't crying was Yolanda, who just kept smiling. That evening, with a peaceful expression on her face, Yolanda passed away. Sometime later, Rudy made an appointment and visited my company. He was dressed impeccably, and I led him to the conference room, wondering what was going on. "I was jealous of you before, and I unfairly blamed you, even driving you to resign. It was all because of my own shortcomings. I can't apologize enough," he said quickly, as he attempted to kneel before me. Whoa, no need for that. I quickly stopped him, holding his shoulder and urging him to stand. He explained that Mr. Truman had told him everything. The real reason the company was closed and why I was close to Mr. and Mrs. Truman. Realizing he had wronged me without knowing the full story, Rudy was filled with regret. Although Rudy kept insisting it was all his fault. I knew I had things to apologize for as well. I'm sorry, too, for acting so immaturely. Rudy had a strong sense of loyalty to Mr. Truman. It must have bothered him to see someone like me, who had joined through a mid-career hire, getting close to Mr. Truman so quickly. I had suspected this from the beginning but did nothing about it. We should have talked things out back then. Yeah. Rudy mentioned that he had switched to a completely different industry. We might never cross paths again, given our respective fields. With that in mind, I extended my right hand. Rudy didn't say anything but smiled and shook my hand firmly. After that, my company continued to grow. Our achievements were recognized, and we were able to resume our business with the school where the delayed delivery had happened. "We're here with your food supplies," I said. I personally handled the first delivery, wanting to offer my apologies as well. Navigating the same tricky roads, I arrived at the school where the stern-faced kitchen staff member greeted me. "On time this time, huh? I'm sorry for the previous time. No need to apologize. Your president already came by and apologized personally." Apparently, Mr. Truman had gone to the school himself to apologize after the incident. So, I heard his wife passed away? Yes, from colon cancer. Such a shame. Why is it that the good ones always seem to go too soon? His words, spoken with genuine sadness, brought tears to my eyes. Well, I need to get back to cooking. Looking forward to working with you again, Mr. Connor. Yes, thank you, and I look forward to working with you too. I nodded in acknowledgement and climbed into the now familiar truck. Yolanda never had children of her own. Maybe that's why she was so kind to the neighborhood kids. She probably took great pride in her work, handling the ingredients for school lunches. As I started the engine and looked up at the blue sky through the window, I thought, I'll visit her grave after work. There's still so much gratitude I haven't had the chance to express to Yolanda. As these thoughts crossed my mind, I could almost hear her gentle voice, as if she were still there with me. Julie can't play the violin. Today, I was at my daughter Julie's violin concert. But despite waiting eagerly, she didn't appear. Worried, I went backstage and found her huddled over, clutching her arm. Apparently, the intense daily practice had caused severe pain in her arm, making it impossible for her to play. Come on, we've been waiting. Hurry up. In the concert hall, impatient shouts from the audience began to echo. The organizer was struggling, discussing with the staff what to do next. Isn't there anyone else who can perform? Anyone else? Everyone's waiting for her. There's no replacement. I know that. But what are we supposed to do? At this point, my body moved on its own. I'll go, no, I'll perform. As I played on stage, my life changed 180 degrees. My name is Trent. I'm 42 years old. All right. Lunch is ready. Okay. Coming down the stairs was my wife, Yvonne. Trailing behind her was our daughter, Julie, who was rubbing her eyes and moving slowly. Come on, it's almost time for school, right? Julie nodded and headed straight for the front door. From the entrance, I heard a sleepy "I'm off." The door clicked shut. Julie seemed to have gone off to school just like that. Julie doesn't talk much since she started elementary school. She's starting to grow up, becoming more aware of boys and unsure how to interact with her dad. I've heard it happens. But Julie is a kind and honest girl. She'll be talking again soon, I'm sure. Yeah, you're right. Yvonne comforted me as I felt a pang of loneliness. I nodded at her words and gave her a kiss goodbye. We were just your typical happy family. And I was the one who supported them, but not as a regular office worker. Actually, I'm just a part-time worker. You might think it's pathetic for someone my age to be working part-time. Honestly, I felt ashamed of myself too. I'm sorry. Be careful at work. It's okay. We're a family, so don't worry about it. Besides, if you keep looking so down, you'll make me feel down too. I don't want to go to work with a face like that. Yvonne lightly patted my cheeks. I smiled a little and saw her off. Yvonne is a music teacher. As for me, I'm a stay-at-home dad who works part-time. Every morning, it had become my routine to prepare lunch for my wife and daughter. After watching Yvonne leave for work, I cleaned up the kitchen and headed to the living room. There, I saw the familiar violin on display. Beautifully decorated, with a glossy finish. I picked up the violin and began to play. The melody that was ingrained in my memory flowed through the violin. A clear, resonant note emerged. It was exactly the sound I had imagined. It can be played smoothly. But I stopped my hand. The only time it played smoothly was at the very beginning. When I look at my hand, my fingers are trembling so badly that it feels like I'm about to drop the bow that was creating the sound. Huff, huff. Before I know it, my breathing has become labored. Even though I try to continue playing, it feels as if all the strength in my hand is draining away. My arm begins to feel numb, and the bow almost slips from my grasp, so I hurriedly return the violin to its stand. Crash. I placed it down a bit too roughly. But I don't have the luxury of checking whether the violin is all right. I'm too focused on trying to steady my shaking hands. Once, both Yvonne and I played the violin. We both graduated from music school and were praised by our teachers. More than anything, we loved playing the violin. But the world isn't that kind. Violinists aren't exactly rare, either here or abroad. But there are few professionals who can make a living from it. It's hard to make it with just the violin unless you have considerable talent. I really need to find a full-time job soon. Even while doing household chores, I browse job sites during my breaks. Even though I'm working part-time, my income is low. I can't keep putting all the burden on my wife. Before I know it, it's almost time for Yvonne and Julie to come home. I move around busily, opening the refrigerator repeatedly as I prepare dinner. And so, another day ends without me achieving anything. Sunday. The gentle sound of the violin fills the room. A refined, utterly pleasant sound. Mom, are you playing the violin again? Julie asks Yvonne. Yvonne is playing a relaxed tune on the violin in the living room. With a dreamy expression, she responds, "Yes, I am." Yvonne plays the violin on her days off. Unlike me, Yvonne enjoys the violin as a hobby. Mom, you really love playing the violin, don't you? Yes, there's something so calming about the sound. It feels so good. As I watch them, I'm in the kitchen, putting away the dishes. Whenever I go to the living room, Julie naturally retreats to her room, so I take my time cleaning up, allowing Yvonne and Julie to relax in the living room. I enjoy this time more than I thought I would. Hey, Mom. Yes? Can I try playing too? Oh, the violin? Of course, you can. In the living room, Yvonne happily hands the violin to Julie. She places her hands over Julie's and starts teaching her. Hold it like this. Yes, that's right. Now, next, do this. Screech. Mom. Did you hear that? I made a sound. You sure did. That's great. Now, let's try this next. Like this. Oh. What? She managed to do that in such a short time. I was surprised too. She actually produced a proper sound. Even though she's a beginner, she managed to create a real violin sound. Yvonne and Julie beamed with bright smiles. From that day on, Julie began to show an interest in the violin. At first, Yvonne taught her at home, but soon Julie started asking Yvonne if she could learn properly. After some deliberation, Yvonne and I decided to have her start formal lessons with the professional violin teacher, Mr. Yates. Julie and Yvonne went to talk to him right away, and she began taking lessons. Mom! Hurry, hurry! Today's violin day. Julie's smiles became more frequent. She used to retreat to her room often, but since she started learning the violin, she began going out more. It was a good sign. Then one day, Yvonne came to me excitedly, with Julie in tow. Hey, darling. Yes? What's up? Yvonne spoke to me with a delighted expression. At that moment, I thought something good must have happened. Yvonne nudged the fidgeting Julie from behind, urging her to go ahead. Julie timidly approached me and showed me a piece of paper. I took it, curious. It's a thick piece of paper. Excellence Award. What? I let out a gasp of surprise. I looked at Julie. She gave me the shy smile I hadn't seen since she was a little girl. Julie, you won an award. Yeah. Julie answered shyly. Julie had won this award in front of renowned educators at a competition that seeks to discover promising talent from among many budding young musicians across the country. She's found something she's truly passionate about, and she's smiling more. This is wonderful. And the surprises didn't end there. Hello, this is Trent. My wife, Yvonne, couldn't make it because of work, so I'm here instead. One day, I was called in by Mr. Yates, Julie's violin teacher. Since Yvonne was at work, I had to go, and I nervously walked into the violin class. Are you Julie's father? As soon as I entered the room, someone grabbed my hand. Yes, I am. I'm Julie's father. I answered hesitantly, realizing that the person was Mr. Yates. After thanking him for all he's done, Mr. Yates hurriedly made me sit down and offered me a chair. We sat facing each other, and he began talking about my daughter Julie. Julie is incredible. She's a once-in-a-decade talent. Violin, you mean? Yes, absolutely. Mr. Yates continued, his face filled with genuine joy as he spoke about Julie's progress. Apparently, she's won numerous awards and can already play difficult pieces. Here are some of the evaluation sheets from the judges when she won those awards. All of them are near perfect scores. Even I find Julie's performances truly remarkable. I look over the evaluation sheets from the competition judges where Julie participated. Just as Mr. Yates said, the scores were impressively high. More than that, the comments in the remarks section were all words of praise for Julie. But it wasn't just praise, each sheet also included detailed feedback on what she should work on and how to improve her performance. The judges had clearly put a lot of thought into their feedback, resulting in a significant amount of text. Therefore, I would like to suggest that she starts studying to become a professional musician. With that, Mr. Yates handed me a slightly thick document. I listened as I took it from him. A change of plan? Yes. Julie is eager, and I think switching to a plan aimed at professional training would be a great idea. What do you think? I couldn't quite grasp the reality of it. Julie, could my daughter really have such talent? With mixed feelings, I hesitated. Just then, there was a knock on the door. Excuse me, it's Julie. May I come in? I quickly glanced at the clock. It was already time for Julie's lesson to end. Good job today, Julie. Thanks, and thank you for coming, Dad. Julie, a little embarrassed, thanked me. Mr. Yates smiled warmly as he watched Julie. Well then, please give it some thought. Julie, I've already discussed this with your father. Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Yates. It seemed that Julie had already heard about it from Mr. Yates. Seeing Julie in such a good mood made me seriously consider what he had said. After we got home, since Yvonne hadn't returned from work yet, I decided to wait for her. I prepared dinner while waiting for her to come back. As soon as Julie got home, she headed straight to her room. Though I couldn't hear from the kitchen, when I went down the hallway, I could hear Julie humming happily along with the soft sound of her violin. Julie, it's getting late, so it's time to stop playing the violin. Okay. I called out to Julie from the hallway, and then headed back to the kitchen, where I heard the sound of the front door opening. I'm home. Welcome back, Yvonne. Yvonne had come home. I took off my apron as I went to greet her. Ah, I'm so tired. Good job today. Julie's already upstairs. Oh, Trent, thank you. It really helped that you picked up Julie. By the way, Mr. Yates called you in today, right? What was that about? Well, actually, Yvonne asked me right away. She must have been curious too. I told Yvonne everything that Mr. Yates had said in the lesson. I couldn't help but frown as I spoke out of concern, but Yvonne's face gradually lit up with each word. So, that's what it was about. Oh, that's amazing. Julie really is something. Yeah, but I know what you're thinking. You're worried it'll be tough, right? But we have to listen to what Julie wants too. Julie, come here for a minute. Yvonne called for Julie. I heard the sound of her quickly running from her room. It seemed like she came out faster than usual. What is it, Mom? It's about what Mr. Yates mentioned today about the violin. Yvonne started to explain. Before she could finish, Julie, her eyes sparkling, eagerly interrupted. I want to do it. I really want to take on the violin seriously. Julie said, looking back and forth between Yvonne and me with an excited expression. I looked at Julie seriously and shook my head. I'm against it. What? The hopeful expression on Julie's face instantly crumbled. She probably thought I would definitely say yes. The joyful look on her face twisted into one of hurt and confusion because of my words. Listen, the world of violin isn't as easy as it seems. Only a handful of people can make a living playing the violin. And if you decide to aim for a professional career, you won't be able to quit just because it gets tough. Julie is still in elementary school. She's at an age where she should be exploring different paths and seeing what the world has to offer. There's no need for her to decide on the path of the violin just yet. Seeing Julie's dejected look, Yvonne gently stroked her shoulder. Julie grabbed Yvonne's hand and looked up at her. Mom, are you against it too? Well. Yvonne glanced at me briefly before smiling gently. I think you should do what you really want to do, Julie. Wait, Yvonne. Why not? Julie wants to do it. I want to support her. But Yvonne kneeled down to meet Julie at eye level. Listen carefully. Like your dad said, once you start, you can't quit just because it gets hard. Sometimes you'll have to push through, even when it's tough. But don't push yourself too far. If it truly becomes too much, it's okay to stop. If you can learn where that line is, you might become truly accomplished. I let out a big sigh at Yvonne's words. Yvonne, I don't want Julie to go through the same hardships I did. That's why I'm against it. Oh, come on. Even Mr. Yates gave her his stamp of approval. That's not the point. We started to argue a bit. Looking back, it wasn't something we should have done in front of Julie, but I was desperate to convince Yvonne. However, after a while, Julie suddenly raised her voice. Okay, Dad. What? Julie faced me with a determined look. It was a face that had made a decision. There's a V international competition coming up. I was talking with Mr. Yates about entering it. If I win that competition, will you allow me to study to become a professional? The V international competition. I widened my eyes when I heard the name. It's a competition known to violinists. It's also a prestigious event that many young violinists enter as a rite of passage. I was deeply conflicted. In the end, I finally gave in and said, all right then. From the next day, Julie became even more dedicated to her violin practice. To meet Julie's request to practice more at home, Yvonne and I assembled a foldable soundproof room we had stored away in the garage. Julie started spending every day inside, practicing. At first, Julie played the violin with joy, but gradually, her expression grew more serious as she immersed herself in practice. Julie, dinner's ready. Julie, come down for dinner. Yvonne and I would call her for dinner. But, of course, Julie couldn't hear us while she was practicing in the soundproof room. It became a routine for Yvonne to open the soundproof room's door and call Julie for dinner. Julie, I've told you to set a schedule, haven't I? You need to eat dinner properly. But I want to use dinner time to practice too. You can't do that. You need to eat properly. And practicing constantly isn't good either. Didn't Mr. Yates tell you that taking breaks is important? He did. Julie looked down, chastised by Yvonne. Lately, there had been more days like this when Yvonne had to scold her. But the next day, Julie would make the same mistake again. She was truly giving it her all. One day, Yvonne had to work late, so she wouldn't be home until later. Dinner's almost ready. I guess I should go get Julie. Since Yvonne wasn't home, I went to call Julie myself. As usual, Julie was practicing the violin in the soundproof room. I went to the room and peered through the small window of the soundproof room to watch Julie. I started to open the door but stopped. I decided to observe her practice for a while. For some reason, I felt curious. The violin Julie held produced a beautiful sound. She started playing a piece, but she missed a note and started over from the beginning. She repeated this several times, and when something occurred to her, she quickly jotted it down. To me, it seemed like a rather rough way of practicing. She kept playing the same passage over and over until she could get it right, repeating it countless times. Oh, You're supposed to do it like that. No, wait. Don't play it like that continuously. Ah. I couldn't help feeling frustrated. At this rate, she would wear herself out. I watched for a little longer, but I couldn't hold back any longer and opened the door to the soundproof room. Julie. Ah. Dad, you scared me. Julie jumped at the sound of my voice. I'm sorry. I was just concerned. Are you struggling with that part? You've been playing it over and over. Yeah. I just can't seem to get it right. Play it for me. Ha? Go ahead, just like you were doing earlier. Oh, okay, Responding to my request, Julie played the violin. And again, she stumbled over the same spot. Ah. I knew it. I gently placed my hand over Julie's. Dad? What are you doing? Originally, your hand was positioned here, right? Now, just move it over here. Imagine it flowing smoothly and relax your arm. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Julie began playing again, following my lead. 1, 2, now. Relax your arm. It's too tense. Yes, like that. Oh. Julie's face lit up with surprise. She finally managed to play the part she had been struggling with. She looked at me with a joyful expression. Wow. That's amazing. I was just putting too much tension in my arm. That's why it felt so awkward. Thanks, Dad. Oh, well, yeah, no problem. I felt a bit embarrassed by Julie's praise. I stepped back from her a little, feeling shy. I couldn't help but intervene when I saw her struggling. For now, let's have dinner. Your mom's still at work. Okay, I'll be right there. No, I'm going to watch and make sure you actually stop this time. It's important to rest properly too. You sound just like Mom. All right. Let's go eat. Okay. Julie reluctantly put down her violin and left the soundproof room. From that day on, I started checking in on Julie's violin practice more often. I was worried about her, but I was also happy to be talking with her more, as she hadn't been very communicative lately. I thought she'd tell me to stop interfering. But when it comes to the violin, she listens to me. Yes. Julie never complained when it came to my guidance on the violin. She listened intently, put my advice into practice, and understood it fully. Through the violin, Julie and I began to reconnect and rebuild our father-daughter relationship. Gradually, her expression softened, and I found myself able to talk to her naturally again. And as I spent more time helping her with practice, I realized something. Her concentration was incredible. When she played the violin, she was so focused that she didn't even hear other people's voices. But her playing wasn't stiff at all. She moved gracefully and played with elegance. Her ability to perform was truly remarkable. Her willingness to learn was another great quality. She absorbed everything she was taught. The more she learned, the better she became. I was particularly impressed by how quickly she could incorporate what she had just been taught into her playing. Mr. Yates was right about her talent. I can see it now. She really does have a gift. But while I was amazed by Julie, she was equally surprised by me. One day, during practice, Julie suddenly praised me. Dad, you're amazing. I had no idea you could play the violin like this. Why don't you play more often? Mom still plays sometimes on the weekends. Well, I'm not like you, Julie. I don't have the courage. Courage? For Julie. I clenched my fists as I thought about it. I used to be called a prodigy when it came to the violin. There was a time when I won nearly every violin competition in the country. There were weeks when I would enter 3 competitions in a row. I loved the violin passionately from a young age, and it brought me so much joy. So, I decided to go abroad to study and pursue a professional career. Everyone had high expectations for me, and I believed I could make it. But reality was far harsher than I imagined. In the country where I studied, I struggled with the language and cultural barriers. It wasn't an English-speaking country, so even though I had learned some basic phrases, everyday conversations and regional accents were far more difficult than I expected. On top of that, I had to adhere to strict etiquette, which took my focus away from my music studies. I tried to be friendly and build relationships with my classmates, who were all striving to improve. But misunderstandings only deepened my isolation. My professors constantly criticized me for not respecting traditions, and the confidence I had at the beginning of my studies quickly eroded. It soon became evident in my demeanor and posture, and those around me began mocking me, throwing out words I couldn't even understand. By the time I realized it, the situation had escalated to severe bullying, and I fell into a slump. Despite my mental state, the competitions wouldn't wait. I found myself standing on stage, exhausted both physically and mentally. My performance lacked any grace, and the audience responded with jeers and boos. In such a large venue, in front of so many people, I fled back to the US, filled with shame and sadness. Since then, every time I tried to play the violin, the memories of that time would flash back, and I just couldn't play anymore. But you're different from me. You'll be okay. I'm sorry I've been so against it. From now on, I'll support you with all my heart. Together with your mom. Dad. Julie reached out and held my clenched fist. It was as if she was telling me everything would be all right. The way you've been teaching me, Dad, your playing was really amazing. I realized right away how much you must have practiced to produce that sound. How hard you must have worked. No matter what anyone else says, you're the best in the world to me. Well, look at that. You're making me blush with such kind words. Hey! I'm being serious. Thank you, Julie. I quickly stood up. I felt like I was about to cry. I pretended to check the time as I opened the door to the soundproof room. I didn't want Julie to see my face. All right, I need to start making dinner. Your mom should be home soon. I hurried to the kitchen, speaking in a somewhat clumsy manner. Julie's words filled me with joy. A few days later, the day of Julie's competition finally arrived. Yvonne and I waited anxiously for the results. But deep down, we already knew the outcome. We believed in Julie. Okay. I'm going to show you now. Julie called out to Yvonne and me. We both nodded. Ta-da! Eh? Julie pulled out a piece of paper. It was a certificate. Of course. I won first place. Yay! It's all thanks to you, Dad and Mom, for cheering me on. Thank you so much. The 3 of us celebrated together. Julie had won first place in the competition. And what's more, she was the youngest winner ever. Julie had secured her ticket to becoming a professional violinist with her own hands. Julie is different from me. She'll be okay. I vowed from that day on to support her with all my strength. The day after the competition, word of Julie's victory spread, and the media showed up at our house. Julie was soon featured as a prodigy violinist in newspapers and on television. The response was so overwhelming that an impromptu concert was arranged for the winners. Since Julie had won first place, she would be the headliner for the concert. As soon as Julie's name was announced, the concert tickets sold out immediately. It seemed she already had a growing fan base. It's next week. Next week. You guys have to come. Mom, Dad. Julie was overjoyed about the upcoming concert. She reminded Yvonne and me of the date several times, and both of us arranged to take the day off to see her perform. On the day of the concert, Yvonne and I showed our tickets to the staff and entered the venue. We're not the ones performing, but I can't help feeling nervous. Yeah, me too. I chuckled at Yvonne's comment. My hands were sweating profusely. We found our seats, and soon, the performances of the other violinists, who had also begun their professional journeys, began. Each performance was met with thunderous applause, fitting for the competition's top finishers. And then, it was finally Julie's turn. My heart was pounding. Wait. A murmur started to spread through the audience. Julie wasn't coming out. And the staff seemed to be moving around frantically. Something was wrong. What's happening? Why is she so late? Yeah. I'll go check. I couldn't stand the worry any longer and quickly got up from my seat. I hurried to the dressing room, where I had heard Julie would be waiting. A staff member stopped me along the way, but when I explained that I was Julie's father, they escorted me to her dressing room. Ouch, ouch. Julie. I could hear Julie's groans even from outside the room. When I rushed inside, I found her curled up, clutching her arm. Her face was twisted in pain and distress. What happened? What's going on? I didn't care about the people around me. I rushed straight to Julie. Seeing me, Julie began to cry, her tears streaming down her face as she spoke. Dad. My arm hurts. I can't play. It seemed the intense pain in her arm was preventing her from playing the violin. She must have overworked her arm while preparing for the competition. This venue is in a remote area, so even if we call an ambulance, it won't arrive until after the concert ends. We're looking for ice and compress. So let's give her some first aid in the meantime. Thank you. The staff pressed a wet towel and a cold water bottle against the affected area. Julie seemed to be enduring the pain as best as she could. I gently stroked her head. It's okay, Julie. Don't worry about anything. Just keep still and rest, I said, trying my best to reassure her. But even through her tears and pain, Julie seemed concerned about what was happening around her. Noticing her anxiety, I glanced around the room. The staff looked flustered. What should we do? Is there no one? But everyone's waiting for her. I could hear their worried voices. The organizers were clearly struggling to figure out what to do. Hey, we're waiting out here. Hurry up. The murmurs from the audience were loud enough to reach the dressing room. This isn't good. The concert can't go on like this, and Julie's reputation could be at stake. I looked over at the violin sitting near Julie. It was the same violin I had used during her practice sessions. Even though it was Julie's violin, I had grown accustomed to it through our practice together. I made a decision. Excuse me. Yes? I got up the courage to talk to someone who seemed to be the organizer. And then, I'll go on stage. What? I'm Julie's father. I'll perform. With that, I picked up Julie's violin. I'll just borrow this for a bit. Dad. Julie looked at me with worry. One of the organizers, who had been standing nearby, tried to stop me. Wait, do you even play the violin? I've won several competitions in the past. I wasn't lying. I had indeed won numerous competitions in my younger days. Whether I still had the skill now was another matter. The organizer hesitated. Understandably so. After all, the plan was for a young girl to perform on stage, not some middle-aged man whose abilities were unknown. However, they are unable to find a replacement and are keeping the audience waiting for a long time. We can't just send out one of the performers who has already finished playing again. As the organizer hesitated, clearly at a loss, Julie suddenly shouted out, "My father is incredible. He's been teaching me almost every day outside of lessons. He's an amazing violinist." Don't you know Trent? Wait. Trent? You mean that Trent? The older organizer seemed to recall my name. Trent. I remember you now. You were quite the violinist back in the day. So, you've continued playing? Well, I've had a long break. I see. All right, I'll let you take the stage. Can I count on you? Thank you. I won't let you down. I gripped my violin bow and declared emphatically, "Who would have thought I'd get to hear you play again? It's worth living a long life, I tell you. Hey, hurry up and get the stage ready. We're about to hear Trent's performance." I made my way to the stage. Before leaving the dressing room, I glanced back at Julie. She smiled at me encouragingly and gave a firm nod. With Julie's violin in hand, I stepped out to the center of the stage. As the spotlight finally fell on the performer, the audience fell silent for a brief moment. But then, they quickly realized something was off, and the murmurs and whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Facing the audience, I spoke into the microphone. "I'm Julie's father. Unfortunately, my daughter had an accident and can't perform. I will be playing in her place." Before I could even finish my sentence, boos erupted from the audience. "Are you kidding me? We've been waiting for Julie. Give us our money back." The number of boos was significant. But I raised the violin and moved into playing position. My hand, gripping the bow, trembled. The large venue, the dazzling stage, and the dissatisfied voices of the crowd all brought back memories of that dark time when my mind was in turmoil. But this time was different. My daughter and wife were counting on me. I scanned the audience. And there she was, Yvonne, hands clasped together, looking at me with unwavering support. The memories of crumbling under pressure tried to surface, but I pushed them aside. I took a deep breath, letting everything go. I drew the bow. The sound resonated through the hall. Suddenly, the entire venue fell silent. I couldn't even hear a cough. The boos ceased, and those who had been complaining fell quiet. Many in the audience widened their eyes, now fully attentive to my performance. What felt like a long yet fleeting moment passed as I poured everything I had into the music. My body began to tingle with a familiar numbness. But I played to the very end. I had performed a piece in front of so many people, from start to finish. Bravo! As soon as I finished, a thunderous cheer erupted throughout the venue. I immediately looked toward Yvonne. Yvonne was in tears. I can see it from a distance. She was crying, but she smiled at me with pride. In that moment, I felt like I had finally overcome something significant. Riding that wave of emotion, I performed a few more pieces, relishing the applause that followed. When I finally stepped off the stage, my arms were tingling from the exertion. But it was a satisfying, almost joyful, pain. I can do this again. I can play the violin. Dad! Whoa! Julie? Are you okay? How's your arm? Julie rushed out and jumped into my arms. Dad, thank you. That was an amazing performance. It was so beautiful. Julie showered me with praise, one compliment after another, like a storm of affection. Her words filled me with a profound sense of happiness. To be praised by my own daughter, it was the best feeling. I hugged Julie back tightly. Thank you. It's all thanks to you and Yvonne. In the days that followed. Since that day, my hands no longer trembled when I played the violin. I had overcome the pressure and was able to return to performing as a violinist. And by my side was Julie. Yes, we are now performing as a father-daughter violinist duo. We become so popular that we even receive invitations to appear on television. And of course, Yvonne is always there, supporting us every step of the way. Julie fully recovered from her injury, and now she stands beside me, playing better than ever. I can't afford to lag behind. As a child, I was celebrated as a prodigy, but I was always alone. I was bullied and isolated, with no one to lean on. But now, I'm not alone. No matter where I am, my family is always with me. I've come to realize the importance of having a supportive family. And I know now that my desire to protect my daughter has guided me in the right direction. I was idly passing the time in the lobby on the first floor when I happened to glance toward the elevator. To my surprise, I saw Emily and Mark step out of the elevator, looking completely dejected. Without thinking, I rushed over to them. What? What happened? The presentation, it's only been about 10 minutes. When I asked, Emily weakly shook her head. It's already over. Her voice was trembling, as if she was on the verge of tears. What in the world could have happened? My name is Tom. I'm 30 years old. Currently, I'm on the first floor of Grand Holdings, clenching my fists as I face the two of them. Good luck. I'm sure everything will be fine. At my words, Mark, the seasoned senior employee, nodded with a gentle expression. And then, there was Emily. She's the president of Johnson Advertising, and she bit her lip nervously. Yes. We've got this. With Mark's flyer design and your video, we're bound to nail it, right? Wearing a navy blue suit and with her rich black hair neatly tied back, Emily gave me an endearing smile. When she smiles, you can just catch a glimpse of her charming double tooth. Yes. The video is a piece I poured all my skills into, and I'm confident it'll shine. Please do your best in the presentation. As I bowed deeply, the elevator arrived from the upper floors, and its doors opened. Emily and Mark stepped inside and turned to face me. Well then. We're off. With those words, the elevator doors closed. As I watched the numbers on the display rise, my heart pounded in my chest. It's going to be okay. As I kept telling myself that, I took a seat in a corner of the spacious lobby. Today is the day of the advertising competition for Grand Holdings' new product. The budget and project scope are fairly flexible, which made it a challenging project. So Johnson Advertising has been working hard on it for months. Each company has been given a 45-minute slot to present their proposal, and our turn started last, at 6 p.m. Due to the recent resurgence of an infectious disease, a rule was made that only 2 representatives per company could attend. That's why Mark, who is second to none in our company in print design, and Emily, who created the estimates, were the ones to participate. While I stayed in the lobby in case they needed anything regarding the video I produced. Emily, who had disappeared behind the elevator doors earlier, is a 28-year-old president who was thrust into the role not as a superwoman, but because her parents, the previous heads of the company, passed away suddenly. The previous president had a strong influence, and after their sudden passing, several employees left Johnson Advertising. Only a few employees, including Mark, who was concerned about Emily, stayed behind, turning the company into a small but elite advertising firm. They've been scraping by on the ongoing projects they've managed to hold on to, but the financial situation is likely tough. We absolutely need to win this competition, which came to us through the connections of the previous president, to secure a major contract. Emily worked tirelessly to craft a proposal that would stand out from the competition, fighting with the numbers in the estimates. I joined this struggling company as a video editor a year ago. Johnson Advertising originally specialized in print work, and when video projects started coming in, they outsourced them to freelancers. However, as we began receiving more requests for combined flyer and video packages, they decided to hire an in-house video editor. That's when I jumped at the opportunity. I had initially worked in sales after graduating from college, but it wasn't a good fit for me. As a result, my performance wasn't great, and my salary was low. One day, as I was casually watching videos online, I came across an ad for a crowdsourcing site. It was a site where people looking to take on various jobs and those looking to outsource work could connect. Through this site, transactions could be done without revealing personal information like addresses or real names. Of course, there were intermediary fees involved when using the site. Intrigued by the idea, I started looking into it. In today's internet-driven world, I realized that just about any job could be done from home, and the more I read, the more I wanted to try it myself. After researching jobs that seemed accessible and lucrative for beginners, I landed on video editing. The only time I had ever worked on video production before was once in a high school class. At first, I couldn't do it at all, and even inserting a single line of text was a struggle. But as I gradually got the hang of it, I started to enjoy it, getting absorbed in the details, and ended up receiving a decent grade. My teacher even praised me, saying, "You've got a good eye." Remembering that, I began teaching myself video editing. After a few months of studying, I uploaded some of my own videos to a crowdsourcing site, using the name of my old cat Mittens as a nickname, and applied for every project that needed a video editor. The initial gigs paid very little, but the satisfaction of having my work recognized as professional gave me a sense of accomplishment. However, as time went on, I started wanting more. There were many projects that didn't pay enough for the time they took, and I began to feel exhausted. Then, a relatively well-paying job appeared. The client's name was missed. I applied, not expecting much, but I got the job. Not only that, but I received high praise for my work. From then on, Mist would occasionally send me projects, and I spent my evenings editing videos as a side job after returning home from my sales work, leading a pretty hectic life. But eventually, I found myself wanting to quit sales and make a living solely from video editing. It was around that time that I saw the job posting from Johnson Advertising urgently seeking a video editor. I jumped at the chance and sent in my application along with a sample of my work. I had more confidence in the videos I produced for clients, but I hesitated to show those to others. So I created a new video that showcased all my current skills. Emily's eyes lit up when she saw it. And that's how I ended up leading a fulfilling life as a video editor at Johnson Advertising. Since joining the company, I've completely stopped taking jobs through the crowdsourcing site. Somehow, it didn't feel right to use the skills I was now dedicating to Johnson Advertising for other companies. There was also the possibility that those other companies could become rivals at some point. Not long before that, Mist had sent me a polite message saying they were hiring an in-house video editor and would no longer need my services. The message was so carefully worded that it left a good impression on me. I replied with a similarly thoughtful message, thanking them for everything, and since then, I haven't logged into the crowdsourcing site at all. As these thoughts wandered through my mind, I was praying for the success of Emily and Mark's presentation. It must have been about 10 minutes. I heard the sound of the elevator arriving on the first floor. If it was someone from the company we were pitching to, I thought I should at least bow in greeting. I stood up from my chair and looked toward the elevator, and then, to my shock, Emily and Mark stepped out, looking completely dejected. Without thinking, I rushed over to them. What happened? It's only been about 10 minutes. Oh, is it my turn? When I asked, Emily weakly shook her head. It's already over. Her voice trembled, as if she was about to cry. They asked to see the estimate first, and when I showed it to them, they said there's no way we could discuss anything with those numbers. I was outraged. What the hell? We put so much thought into this, and poured our hearts into the flyer and the video, and they didn't even bother to look at them? At my words, both Emily and Mark hung their heads. I'm sorry. You worked so hard, and because of my estimate, not only did we not get a chance to present, but they didn't even take a look. I grabbed the presentation materials they were holding. What? Emily's eyes widened in surprise. There's still plenty of time left. I'm going to protest. If they're still going to turn us down, then I don't care how big they are. I'm fine with not working with a company like that. Even if they end up hating us, right? Leaving those words behind, I stepped into the elevator and quickly pressed the close button. As the doors shut, Emily and Mark's stunned faces disappeared from view, and the elevator slowly began to move. The presentation room is on the 10th floor. I anxiously watched the numbers rise as the elevator ascended. When suddenly, it stopped at the 4th floor. Hurry up already. I gritted my teeth as I waited for the door to open, and when it finally did, I found myself face to face with a breathtakingly beautiful woman. She gave a slight bow and stood next to me. The faint scent of her perfume wafted through the air. But I didn't have time to be distracted by her. Once I confirmed she was on board, I quickly pressed the close button again. I fixed my eyes on the numbers indicating the floors. Then, the woman spoke. If you keep shaking like that, the elevator might stop. Her words snapped me out of it. I realized I'd been nervously tapping my foot against the floor. Sorry. I quickly stopped fidgeting. She smiled softly. It's okay. 10th floor. Are you here for the advertising presentation by any chance? I was a bit surprised and nodded. Just then, the elevator arrived on the 10th floor and the doors opened. As I hurried to rush out, the woman called after me. We're heading to the same place. Let me guide you. Oh, and I apologize for the late introduction. She handed me her business card as she spoke. I didn't think I needed a guide or an introduction, but I took out my own card and exchanged it with her anyway. When I looked at the card she handed me, I was shocked. It had the words Marketing Department. and the title manager printed on it. Manager. Sophia. I asked in surprise, and Sophia smiled. Yes, I thought I'd drop by since it's almost the end of the presentation time. Before she could finish, I blurted out, "What do you mean by judging only by the budget without even looking at the content?" Sophia's eyes widened at my words. "What do you mean?" I, recalling the pained expression on Emily's face, couldn't help but spill the details in a heated tone. As I spoke, Sophia's eyes narrowed, and she quickly walked down the hallway, leaving me behind. I hurried to follow her. Sophia burst through the meeting room door, and the two men inside, who were tidying up, looked at us in surprise. They seemed to think the presentation was already over, which infuriated me and filled me with frustration. "What are you doing?" "There's still time left." The two men smiled and replied that it was already finished. It seemed they hadn't noticed my presence. Then, Sophia glanced back at me and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, but this is going to be an internal matter. Could you please wait outside for a moment?" I nodded, and she quickly shut the heavy door. The door was so solid that no matter how hard I tried to listen, I couldn't hear a thing. I resigned myself to waiting for the door to open again. After a while, the door opened, and the two men, along with Sophia, deeply bowed to me. "We sincerely apologize for our rudeness. You may no longer wish to do business with our company, but if you could spare the time, we would very much like to see your presentation. What do you think?" Their polite apology caught me off guard. "Of course. I'll go get the others right away." As I turned to leave, Sophia called out, "Tom." She had remembered my name from the card I gave her earlier. Normally, we only allow 2 representatives per company, but since you're already here, we'd love for you to join us as well. With those words, it was decided that I would join the presentation as well. 5 minutes later, Emily, Mark, and I were once again facing the two men from Grand Holdings and Sophia. After presenting the estimate, we showed them the flyer and video concepts, and Emily confidently delivered the marketing strategy presentation. Once all the explanations were complete, we moved on to the Q&A session. Sophia was the first to speak. What was the reasoning behind this estimate? When asked, Emily responded. She explained that they were determined to win. So they slashed the budget as much as possible and made every effort to differentiate themselves from the competition. She proudly mentioned that both Mark and I worked quickly, allowing us to cut down on labor costs significantly. I felt a bit of pride when she included me in her praise for being efficient. But then, Sophia sighed and shook her head. "It's too low." We exchanged puzzled glances at her unexpected words. "What you've presented is remarkably well done, including the strategy. If we were to award this job at this price, our company would be laughed at. That's how good it is." Despite her harsh words about the pricing, she was full of praise for the content of our presentation. I felt a bit confused. While I apologize for our representatives' earlier rudeness, I can understand why they didn't look at the content. Sophia's words made me furrow my brow. They thought it was so cheap that it wasn't even worth looking at. All of us widened our eyes in shock. The two men who were overseeing the presentation were apparently highly competent and had been entrusted with this task due to their impressive track records, but they were also exhausted from listening to presentations all day. In that state, they had come to a conclusion. If the budget doesn't align, no amount of discussion will matter. Although we weren't given a budget range, Grand Holdings had a rough idea in mind, and they were looking for proposals that fit within that range. They quietly marked proposals that were too expensive as out of bounds. And for those, No matter how compelling the presentation was, it felt like a waste of time. I could understand that mindset to some extent. Sophia clarified the doubt that had been growing in my mind. If the price is too low, they assume the quality will be subpar as well. I noticed Emily trembling slightly beside me. Sophia looked at us intently, as if to drive her point home. Don't lower your prices too easily. Don't undervalue your work. Her firm statement made Emily bow her head. I'm the one who prepared the estimate. I'm sorry. I didn't know better. The rest of us also bowed our heads in unison. I sensed a faint smile from Sophia. When I cautiously looked up, I saw her beautiful face smiling warmly. It was a stark contrast to the fierce expression she had just moments before. If this were the final price, we'd be tempted to jump at it. But I want to show respect for the quality of your work, especially the video editing. It should be priced like this. Sophia showed us the number on her calculator, and we were astonished. It was at that moment that I realized just how underpaid I had been for the work I did on the crowdsourcing site. Seeing our reaction, Sophia chuckled a bit. We can't declare a winner for the competition just yet, but if we do end up working together, we'll discuss the pricing. Emily, Mark, and I couldn't help but smile as we exchanged glances. We left Grand Holdings with a strong sense of satisfaction from the presentation. Emily covered her face. It was too cheap. How embarrassing. Video editing really is a specialized skill. I knew it was difficult, but I must have been outsourcing for ridiculously low prices. I wish I could go back and pay Mittens extra now. At her words, I whipped around to face her. What? What did you just say? Mittens. At my outburst, Emily's eyes widened in surprise. What? Oh, yeah. Before you joined, I used to outsource all our video work through a crowdsourcing site. I thought I was offering a bit more than other listings, but now I realize it was still way too low. I shook my head in disbelief. Wait, are you missed? Emily's eyes widened even more. What? How did you know? Wait, no way, could it be? Seeing her shocked expression, I confessed. I'm Mittens. Cheap? You were actually paying quite generously compared to others. It really motivated me back then. On crowdsourcing sites, you don't typically know the real names or addresses of the people you work with. You might know what state they live in if they share that much, but I never imagined I'd run into a client I had worked with here. So, basically, I just transitioned from being an outsourced freelancer to a full-time employee. What a coincidence! I couldn't help but laugh at how funny the situation was. Emily laughed along with me, chuckling softly. When we were hiring for a video editor, I was secretly hoping Mittens would apply. I thought about reaching out. But direct contact is against the rules, and you hadn't shared your location. Turns out, you were in Tokyo all along. On a crowdsourcing site, it's strictly prohibited for people who meet through the platform to engage in direct transactions without going through the site. Hiring someone as an employee would likely fall under that same prohibition. Now it all makes sense. I found myself comparing every applicant to Mittens, and when you showed up, I was shocked. I thought, this guy is just as good as Mittens. Well, of course, it's because it was you. We spent some time reminiscing, sharing stories about past projects. How tough some were, how others felt like we were perfectly in sync. Then, Emily suddenly turned serious and said, I'm sorry for underestimating your skills. I promise to properly evaluate your work from now on. So, will you continue to stand by my side and lend me your strength? Her earnest gaze made my heart race. I could feel my face turning red. Of course. I'm looking forward to it. At my words, Emily smiled warmly. I couldn't help but think how much I adored that smile. A few days later, the office phone rang, and I absent-mindedly picked it up. As soon as I introduced myself, I heard a soft exhale on the other end. Thank you for taking my call. This is Sophia from Brand Holdings. I wanted to thank you for your time the other day. Hearing Sophia's voice made me sit up straight. So, what was the result of the competition? I swallowed nervously as I was about to transfer the call to Emily, our president. But then, Sophia continued, after reviewing the submissions, we've decided that we would love to work with Johnson Advertising on this project. Would you be willing to take it on? I pumped my fist high into the air. All the other employees turned their eyes toward my raised fist. Additionally, I'd love to strengthen our partnership. How about we have a small dinner sometime to get to know each other better? Still holding the phone to my ear, I said, absolutely. We'd be honored, and gave a deep bow, even though she couldn't see me. And a few days later, the same team that attended the presentation gathered at a somewhat upscale restaurant for dinner. Honestly, I was so nervous that I could barely taste the food. However, Sophia and the two men from Brand Holdings were in great spirits. And the men kept apologizing whenever the conversation drifted back to the presentation. I couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for them, imagining that Sophia must have given them a stern talking to. We were supposed to head to a bar for a second round, but both men, who had young children at home, left quickly to return to their families. Mark also decided to call it a night, saying he couldn't drink anymore, so it ended up just being me, Emily, and Sophia heading to the bar. Sophia was the person I was most nervous around, so both Emily and I were on edge, trying not to make any mistakes. But Sophia seemed to be used to this kind of setting and naturally helped us relax. Once the atmosphere had warmed up, Emily excused herself, saying, "Oh, I'll just go to the restroom for a moment," leaving me alone with Sophia. In the brief silence that followed, the scent of her perfume seemed to grow stronger, making my heart race. Sophia leaned on her hand and moved her lips, asking me, "So, do you have a girlfriend?" Her question caught me off guard, and I quickly shook my head from side to side. "I don't have one." Sophia chuckled softly. "Then, there must be someone you like, right?" Her words hit the mark, and I found myself flustered. Sophia stared at me intently. I wish that person was me. My eyes widened in surprise. As I stood there speechless, Sophia suddenly burst into laughter. "I'm just kidding." "Well, I'm not one to linger where I'm not wanted, so I think I'll take my leave now." She picked up the check as she spoke. "No, please. Let us cover it." I tried to stop her, but Sophia winked at me. "I'm going to be relying on you from now on. Let's keep in touch, okay?" She turned away but then glanced back, leaning in close to whisper in my ear, "If things don't progress with Emily, don't be surprised if I make a move, okay?" With that whispered in my ear, Sophia finally left the bar. As I replayed the whole exchange with Sophia in my mind, my heart still pounding, Emily returned. "Oh, where's Sophia?" she asked, and I barely managed to respond. "Oh, she said she was feeling a bit tipsy and decided to head home." Emily's face fell slightly as she replied, "I see." A heavier silence hung between us than the one with Sophia. Well, shall we head out too? Emily suddenly suggested, and though surprised, I agreed without hesitation. There was no reason to stay. We walked slowly toward the station through the night streets. Neither of us said a word. The only sound was that of our footsteps. Earlier, I actually saw something, Emily suddenly said, catching me off guard. Saw what? I asked nervously, and she pressed her lips together, forcing a smile. You and Sophia looked like you were having a moment, she said, turning her gaze forward. Sophia, she's really beautiful, isn't she? You're amazing, Tom, to catch the eye of someone like her. Compared to that, I'm just so incompetent. Emily rattled on quickly. Do you think Grand Holdings might try to poach you? At the very least. I want you to stay by my side when it comes to work, but is that too much to ask? As Emily continued to ramble, I hugged her from behind. The one I love is you, Emily. Her shoulders trembled. What? I whispered in her ear. I love everything about you, the way you've taken on the role of president so suddenly and are doing your best. How you always smile to hide your worries, and that charming double tooth that shows when you smile. I love it all. No way, my double tooth, it's my biggest insecurity. I've been planning to get braces once the business starts making more money. I couldn't help but laugh softly. Well, I'm glad the business isn't booming yet. My light-hearted comment made Emily laugh softly as well. Are you sure you want me? Sophia is so much more. I tightened my arms around her. I want you, Emily. Emily squeezed my hand tightly. I'm so happy. She looked up at me with a smile. From today on, let's be partners both at work and in life. The smile she gave me, with her little double tooth showing, was the most adorable I'd ever seen. And a few years later, Jake. Rick. Lunch is ready. Go wash your hands. At my call, our sons, Jake and Rick, came dashing out of their room. It was right in the middle of summer vacation. Jake and Rick, both in elementary school, were enjoying their break to the fullest. Their little sister, Lily, was having her own fun at kindergarten, which fortunately stayed open all summer. So she didn't have to worry about the break. Since then, Emily and I had gotten married and started a family. Our family quickly grew, and now we are a family of 5. During long breaks like this or when one of the kids is sick, I work remotely to take care of things. It makes more sense for me, the video editor, to work from home than for Emily, who's handling her duties as the company president. After surviving the whirlwind of the day, at around 6 p.m., I'm home. I'll hurry and get dinner ready, Emily would say as she walked through the door, her usual greeting. In line with her wish to cook dinner herself whenever possible, we wait for her on days when she can come home on time. The kids swarm around her, and I have to peel them off one by one. It's a familiar sight by now. Come on, now. Mom's busy, so be patient for just a little longer. I guide them back to their room to tidy up. After that, we go through the routine of a quick dinner, bath time, and then Emily reads a story to the kids as she puts them to bed. Finally, it's just the two of us, alone. Is it childish to say this is the time when I get to have Emily all to myself? As for Johnson Advertising, after that day, we started receiving regular work from Grand Holdings. This opened the door to many other opportunities. And now, with a growing staff, the company has become a solid mid-sized advertising agency, handling a wide variety of projects. And Sophia? Well, she ended up marrying a handsome heir, and we were invited to the wedding. It was a dizzyingly grand event, and Sophia, glowing in her bridal gown, looked incredibly happy. I still think back to that presentation that almost ended after just 10 minutes. My actions as a professional that day might not have been the most commendable. I mean, I was ready to storm into their office and demand they hear us out. But if we hadn't pushed to present at that competition, we wouldn't be where we are today. The delicious smell of sizzling meat filled the air, tickling my nose. Tonight's dinner must be Emily's favorite, chicken sautéed in butter. Surrounded by the happy scent that filled the house, I couldn't help but smile as I urged the kids to continue tidying up.